and LinkedIn. I'm not sure if Instagram got it. I'm learning. This is a new experience. And, if I'm going to talk about confidence, confident people are not afraid to try new things. Worst thing that can happen is everything falls apart. So we're going to have fun. And again, let me check one thing. So just hold on. I'm not sure if it's live on Facebook and or LinkedIn. Okay. Hold on one second. I see what's happening. Cool. All right. So again, I kind of misunderstood when I was reading up on. I've had StreamYard, and friends have used it, and I've been on it on other people's things. And like a lot of us, we, the Dunning-Kruger effect. We think we know things we don't know, but what begins to happen is, I sort of read between the lines and assumed some things that aren't true. And but after learning this, I'll see what I do next week. Maybe go back to Zoom and do some other things. So one of the things we're going to do in a second is hold on one second. Let me do one thing. Again, this is a learning experience. You're growing with me, which is fun, right? Challenging, fun things are always challenging, fun things. Hold on one second. I don't know if someone could do me one favor and go see if this is streaming on Facebook, which would be the here. Maybe not. So here we go. We are getting started. If people miss it, I can record it. It will go live. I can post the recording. Here we go. Okay. So today we're going to be talking about confidence, right? And it's a fascinating subject. And I'll talk about a few different things with it. And I'm calling it like the, oh, good. It is working. Booyah, right? I don't know if it's on LinkedIn. I figured out what I did wrong on Instagram. I will correct that in the future. So anyway, it's a learning experience. But what about confidence? It's one of those things a lot of people talk about. We all talk about it. And what is it, right? And, so let's kind of delve into it in different ways. So when you look at confidence, why is it so important? I'm calling James Bond confidence, right? And that's an interesting thing. I posted that, and I got an interesting dialogue going with someone. I don't know who they are. Probably one of those haters you get on. I think it was on Facebook. And they're like, why would you? I'm a scientist and a doctor. And whenever you say that, that goes back to when I was talking about what I'll be teaching in the behavior profiling class. This person wants to be significant and stand out, right? Why would you mention that you're a scientist and a doctor? Well, first of all, if you're a doctor, if you really understand it, presupposes you're a scientist. I'm a doctor. Technically my psych degree is a science degree. But anyway, because he said, why would you want to study fictional character? They're not working, right? Or why would you do that? And I'm like, interesting point. And I'm like, you're working under the assumption that your prefrontal cortex, that part of the gray matter front part of your brain, white and gray matter, actually controls you. It does not, right? I mean, that's the underlying thing of all this, right? But all I pointed out was throughout history, the reason like picking maybe a fictional character, if it resonates with you, right? Because usually these things will resonate with you, a fictional character, because it lights something up. It's called narrative resonance, and this goes to confidence, right? It's like you see something in them, or they light something up in you. So it's like when you hear a story and it connects with you. It's what the 12. It's why you all know I harp on the 12-step recovery program. It's why that works for that group. It's the first time they feel narrative resonance with someone else talking about an addiction, not just you should stop, this is killing you, you're smarter than this, you could be better. You hear someone else says, I got a advanced degree from Harvard, but I can't quit drinking. So anyway, but this guy said that, and I said, but you don't understand, our brains were built to learn on stories, and archetypes will relate with an archetype, right? Whatever that archetype happens to be. This is why it's so powerful, right? And I use James Bond because in some ways, it's still out there. It's kind of dating myself, and James Bond's kind of changed. But when you go back, if you ever read one of the Ian Fleming novels, James Bond is the epitome of cool, the epitome, and cool can translate into confidence, right? Whether it's talking to a beautiful girl, whether it's playing a card game in Monte Carlo, whatever it happens to be, or making wisecracks as he's about to be executed, right? That's confidence, and it resonates because some of us would long to have that kind of confidence, to walk into a situation, not know what's going on, and just be cool, calm, and collected, right? So that's why I just picked James Bond. I could have picked, Jason Bourne. That's a newer one. But whatever it happens to be. But the other thing, when you get into confidence, we're going to talk about two types: the kind of confidence you want, the kind of confidence you want to avoid. One of the things James Bond was the perfect epitome of was positive confidence. He made other people feel confident, usually his sidekick, or, someone that would get sucked into the adventure story with him. You could do this, and it brings out the best in you. That's positive confidence. A truly positive, confident person you want to be around, because not just the resonance, they make you feel good. They make you feel like you could do this. They encourage you to try, and you see things in them that you go, wow, that's really cool, whatever it happens to be, right? That's positive confidence. Negative confidence, which we'll go into, is the opposite, right? They're confident, and at first you might be drawn in, but they make people feel bad, right? And there's some key markers that we'll go into in a minute, because I promised you how to do this, right? And so, it's the kind of person that, they belittle you if whatever it happens to be. And I'll talk about a couple cults in the hypnosis world and other worlds, right? So anyway, so you have positive confidence where you want to be around them. People stick with you a longer period of time, right? And then there's the negative confidence where, again, you belittle, you downgrade, and underneath it all, one of the biggest things about positive confidence, negative confidence, is the ability to take responsibility, admit you made a mistake, and move on, right? And again, if you're hanging around a positive and confident person and you make a mistake, they'll just usually encourage you to, like, hey, just pick yourself up. What'd you learn? Let's move on. A negative person goes, see, I told you this, and this. And unfortunately, our culture here in America, and from what I've seen in the rest of the world, it's kind of becoming more toward that negative confidence, right? And so let's look at confidence in general. What separates it? Why do some people have it? Why do some people not have it? Evidence? Yes, I speak for a living, making fun of myself. Self-effacing is usually a confidence thing. Yes, Mr. Metzler, negative confidence is kind of arrogant and almost borders on narcissism. It's why we get drawn into narcissistic leaders, narcissistic bosses, partners, friends even, right? They have that confidence you wish you had, right? If you don't get sucked in too deep, something, you may pull back and go, oh, you see them belittle someone, or let's say you're in a group and someone comes in the group and they're active and then they decide to leave. does that leader have the confidence to say, well, I wish you the best, maybe this isn't for you? Or is it like, there's something wrong with you because you don't want to be here, right? Which we see a lot, not just in coaching, NLP, hypnosis, business, things like that. So anyway, when you get into confidence, there's some markers generally, right? I have to be confident enough to put on my glasses, right? What is it that confident people have? What are some of the markers in that, right? And this will tie into what I call neurological needs later on when I teach the behavior profiling class. Number one is not number one, but one of the key factors is self-awareness. Usually truly confident people are self-aware, right? And that they're okay to not know something, because it goes to how do you know something that why would you know it, right? We've seen it now with people that like, oh, I know all about AI. If you know anything about AI, you talk to them. No, you don't, right? But they don't want to admit they don't know, right? But a truly confident person, I don't know. That's not what I do, right? And when you get to the higher levels, like let's say business, they're confident in what they do. They're confident they can bring good things out in you, but they will not try to do everything. A micromanager has no confidence, right? And so you have self-awareness, right? And a truly confident person is magnetic because they're also humble. They're humble enough to go, oh, I'm not real good at this, right? And a little bit of self-effacing, I would throw that in there, right? Admitting an error, taking responsibility. These are the other things, right? Owning a mistake. And I made one, I sent out the wrong link. I sent out the link here to StreamYard. It was just, honestly, I'm not the most detail-oriented person. Yeah. So I thank God I didn't try to go into computer programming. But, I learned from it. Okay, next time, and then we'll adapt, right? So these kind of tie together. You have self-awareness. You have some humility, which sometimes presents itself to a lot of the world as self-effacing, admitting your shortcomings. And there's something that'll resonate with other people, right? And like I just use a horrible political example here in America, but the people that resonate with Donald Trump like that arrogant, to be honest with you, narcissistic confidence. I know more than the generals. Really? This is fascinating too. I know more than the doctors. Well, that may not be hard, but lighten up, people. But it's like whatever it happens to be, right? That'll resonate with them, right? But people that are on a different wavelength, that's the only way to say it. They're like, well, what's wrong with admitting you're going to bring in the experts in this area, right? And again, it's the idea of, you have self-awareness, you have some humility, you have the courage to try new things. You don't just stay in one little box. You'll try something new. Maybe it'll work for you. Maybe it won't. But if you think about that, there's a lot of power in that, right? And so, and take responsibility. And again, they have the courage to make those changes when they're need to be made. And generally, especially on the positive confidence side, you get into the people that they seem to be more easygoing and optimistic. Not that they don't have standards, that they'll hold themselves to a high standard and other people, but they're harder on themselves generally than their team, than their students, than their other people, right? But they're optimistic, right? All the research, I'm back into doing research. All the research points out that we're drawn to optimistic people, right? Because again, this is part of it's in our neurology. Our gene pool survived because of how our ancestors 100,000, 1 million years ago, 5 million years ago, how they adapted to the world. So you do have that little bit of, fear-based stuff where you're afraid of shit that'll kill you. But that's usually tempered with optimism for the future, right? Because again, when you look at people that commit suicide, generally one of the markers is they have no optimism, no hope for the future. Optimism is hope for a better future. When you read the work of, which I always suggest to people, as most of you know, the work of Viktor Frankl, and he would talk about having hope and optimism for the future when he was in a very horrible situation, right? The concentration camps. You heard the same thing of guys coming that made it through the POW camps of World War I, Korea, and Vietnam. John McCain talked about having the hope for the future. Admiral, I think his name was Stockdale, talked about he would play a round of golf or two every day in his cell of whatever his favorite golf course was, right? Where he's a pilot, so it's probably near a Navy air base, right? But he would play a round of golf. And as soon as he got out, as soon as he got a little bit of his health back, because they weren't in good shape when they got out, he went and played a round of golf. And by the way, surprisingly, in his head, what he was shooting, whatever the score was, breaking par, he did it after being in a POW camp for 7 years. So that optimism, it's the hope for the future, which can lead to, being easygoing and that. And generally with that is a sense of humor. And I use that with a touch of salt or whatever it is, pinch of whatever it is. I'm yes, I speak for a living to be self-effacing here, but I'm blessed to train people from different cultures. And so that sense of humor that works here in America, the sarcastic, a lot of double entendres and things, may not play in other parts of the world, right? Like India, Malaysia, in the Middle East. It does a little bit, but generally, the people that, again, they're optimistic, they're easygoing, and they just have a good sense of humor, right? And to me, the underlying thing when I read the research, people point out, is seeing that hope and even things that might be funny in bad situations, right? And you always hear a comic say that they'll tell a joke after something horrible. They go, too soon, right? But it's that, like, usually they always say comedy is tragedy reframed after a while. But can you, and yes, you could develop all of these, but when you think about people that you think have confidence, that magnetic kind you want to be around, do they have these kind of things? Do they have self-awareness? Are they humble with a little bit of connection to other people, self-effacing? Are they risk takers? Do they own their mistakes, take responsibility, right? And move on, right? And if you make a mistake, or if you're around them, when someone in the group, in the team, in the class, whatever it happens to be, makes a mistake or doesn't do something the correct way, whatever that is, does that person that has confidence kind of just say, let's move on, take what did you get out of this? Let's move on, right? That's self-awareness. What did you learn from it, right? And they take responsibility, and they encourage you to take responsibility, right? They advocate for themselves, and usually their clients, their team, their group, right? And usually they're optimistic, easygoing, with some kind of whatever for them is a sense of humor. And it's not always about jokes or things like that. It's just about, what's amusing in the situation, right? And so you can begin to develop these factors, and I'll post the little article thing I developed on Facebook, and I'll probably send the link. I'll post it on Facebook and send it and post it in the groups on Facebook, right? So again, now what we want to look at is developing that positive confidence and not the negative confidence, right? And so when you look at how, confidence is developed, right? It's like you hear me talking, and this gets more into when I do the behavior profiling, that we all have these neurological needs. Some people call them psychological needs. Other people would label them social needs. I label everything back, excuse me, to neurological needs. It's fitting something in your brain, usually in the midbrain, which is right there, right? You hold your head straight, point into your ears. That's the part of your brain. You have your brainstem down here. Then you have your primate brain, your animal brain, like right here, right? That's the part that doesn't understand language, does not understand language. It does notice tone, right? An angry tone, a happy tone, a seductive tone. That part it can process, but it doesn't understand language, because on top of that is your prefrontal cortex, your higher brain, that processes language and this and that. But unfortunately, this part of your brain does not communicate directly with the animal brain and the reptilian brain, right? It will work on, it only works on emotion. It only works on images. It'll process an image of fearful. It's like, and this is from your history, everything in your history. And we know now it's in your genetic history, right? That certain genetic things are passed on. Right? No longer are you totally a blank slate, tabula rasa. When you're born, a lot of people have an ingrained phobia, fear of spiders or snakes, because for a lot of us, that's what's going to kill you, right? But also in this part of your brain, it developed these survival mechanisms, which will go to confidence in a moment. And these survival mechanisms are like wanting to fit in socially, because up to a few thousand years ago, a couple hundred generations, if you will, if you got kicked out of the tribe, the group, or the family, you were dead, right? And that's why we're drawn to groups, right? Everyone should read about, the how groups are formed, right? And this, how this is in your brain. You have 3 to 5 people very close to you. It's also why, when you look at the military, a lot of the military is going back to Rome. There are always these small 5 to 7 man units that, now they'd be called a fire team, a squad, a team, whatever it is, right? Because these people they're like your family of origin. That's the first group. And then you have another group that goes out like, 15 people, maybe up to 20 or 30 that are your close friends, and to use the military analogy, because that seems to be what we adapted to as we were evolving through time. It's it's more like a platoon, right? A group where people, them pretty well, and you work together, and it's for the group survival. And then it keeps going on to like 50 to 150, right? Out to a few more, right? But we want to be in that group. It's why one of our fears that'll light up these deeper parts of your brain, your brainstem, your animal brain, is being kicked out of the group. You ever get upset about maybe you've been kicked out of a group you really didn't want to be a part of anyway, but you ended up leaving it, and then you felt bad, right? So it's kind of interesting. So sometimes there's a neurological need for acceptance and approval, right? Acceptance and approval. It may be very strong, it may be very weak, but we all have these, and you never grow past. One of the reasons I've hesitated teaching this again is the dark side of this is that you'll never see the world the same again. When I say that in the basic of the master NLP, even more than hypnosis, it doesn't teach you how to put people in trance, it teaches you how to bring people out of trance. You don't see things the same way. But if we add the level I'll be teaching next with things, it really can. People ask me why I act like I act. If you take this class, you go, okay, now I understand why he acts like he acts, right? And I'm not saying I've conquered anything internally. But usually truly confident people, when I go back to these needs, you have your need for approval. You have some people want novelty. They want everything new, right? Whatever it is, they want the latest, greatest, they'll have the iPhone 14. And when the 15 came out, Suddenly they had to have the 15, um, whatever happens to be, the newest car. They want things that are different. And this is in your neurology too, because throughout history, this part of your brain looked for things that were novel, that were different, that, it's that it lights up that curiosity. It's a feeling. Again, it's not about words. It's like, oh, is this cool? Will this, because going back 25,000 years ago, 30, 40, 50,000 years ago, will this help me survive? And someone had to be curious enough to, will this berry kill me? Hopefully it doesn't. They eat it and they're fine, right? If they eat it and they die, okay, we learned, right? But we're curious. We want to learn things, Some people love it and they adapt to it and they constantly want more and more novelty. Other people will run from it. And again, there's no right or wrong, right? So then you also have people that want to be significant, right? They'll have visible things of wealth. They'll have to show, they'll make sure they flash their Rolex. They'll mention they drive a whatever BMW 700. Is there such a thing? I don't know. Right? But they want to be significant. They'll tell you all the awards they've won. Point out how significant they are. Now, we all want a little bit of significance. That's why we call our partner our significant other. Hopefully, you're the or one of the most significant things in their life. And if they're your significant other, you need their approval, right? And their connection, right? So we all want, significance, approval, novelty. There's some people that are driven by intelligence. They want to show you how smart they are. And a little bit, these begin to link together, as you can see, right? And again, when I had that interesting thing about the guy that wanted to argue that you shouldn't even look at like fictional characters, he was showing me how smart he was. And I'm like, well, obviously. And I admitted that he was very smart in one of our little interchanges on Messenger, but I use the skills I'll be teaching to like maybe open him up to seeing things a little differently. And then we have some people that just want to show you their strength. They got to show you how strong they are. And it's not just physical strength. It might be emotional strength, intelligence strength. These begin to overlap, right? And strength in every area, right? So they want to show that off. And, good example would be they'll show you, if you're at the gym working out, they'll have to tell you how much they can bench. Or if you tell people you move out, they have to do that. And then there's a small group that they're kind of pity oriented, because again, all this goes to how your genetic pool was developed, right? That, complaining about things got them pity, which might have got them food or shelter or this. And this is down here. And we all go through each of these. There's times we want significance. There's times we want approval. There's times we want novelty. We want to feel smart. Maybe there's times we get into pity, right? The pity pot, we call it, right? Or whatever. And there's times we want to show that we're strong, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. And if you've ever been in things have gone bad, business went bad, you've lost someone close to you, whatever. So you're in a little bit of a pity. And if someone says to you, well, look at all the things to be grateful for, they may nod, but inside you've cut off all communication, right? And again, if you know what need they're demonstrating, if you know how to tap into that, you can influence them in different ways, right? So again, all of these things, right? So truly confident people, it's not that they've balanced all these things are never balanced. You never become like a Zen master where nothing matters to you: significance, approval, novelty, pity, strength. You're floating above it all, living in your cave or whatever. Usually we're balancing it, right? But again, confident people were somehow learned a different skill set, and they're in control of these needs. They don't let those needs drive them, these neurological needs, right? And again, and this will decide different things in their life. They won't have the need to show you they're smart, show you they're the strongest person in the world or in the room, or they don't have to have the latest, greatest thing, you know. It's kind of in balance, right? And again, this goes back to, again, when you think of it that way, and you go back to, how confident people have optimism, they're going with some kind of sense of humor. Sorry about that. And those other things that we talked about, being self-effacing, being self-aware, having courage, humility, taking risks, owning your mistakes and responsibility, and encouraging others. And again, once you put those things in order, then what begins to happen is it develops into positive confidence, what I would call, I don't like labeling positive or negative, but it's the kind of confidence people want to be around. It's infectious. People really want to be around it because it makes them feel good. It resonates with them, and when you look at the people that bring it out in groups, the Tony Robbins, the Brandon Burchards, the politicians that bring it out, they seem to, just have this overflowing, and people will stay around that person longer. To me, that's positive confidence because they're getting something out of it, right? And it keeps growing. On the flip side is negative confidence. That's where someone's confident, but they're arrogant, right? They're, it may be magnetic when you first meet them because we like being around confident people. But it will drive away a lot of other people after they get into it because it becomes a negative reinforcement. They make people feel bad. They belittle other people, right? You see it in groups where, if it's a charismatic leader, how do they handle when someone leaves the group? Are they like, well, I wish them the best things for them? Or do they go, well, that just shows that they're mentally ill, or they can't handle the situation, or, they'll never succeed without this group, right? Groups do it, right? And so it's that positive, and what kind of person do you want to be? What kind of confidence do you want to develop? Becomes the true, the true measuring stick, right? And again, and I delve a little bit into those neurological needs, which is part of the profiling class. And the reason it comes up, someone asked me, why I was teaching it. Why, what makes you want to teach it? Because they've known me a while. And they said, didn't you teach this back in the late 90s, early 2000s? I said, sorry about that. I said, yes, I did. And, but I stopped. And I described it as generally, it kind of goes back when they first really decoded NLP and they got into it. A lot of people go, we shouldn't be teaching this to people. It's too powerful. It's like an X-ray, right? You see people, you see things on the inside. It's like, you see someone, you see what's going on the inside. It's kind of like now you could see a broken bone. When they had X-rays developed, when they finally did X-rays, it changed medicine because they could see the broken bone. It wasn't guesswork. It was like, hey, we need to set this bone, and they could take another picture and do this, right? Changed medicine. Then one of the next big leaps is three-dimensional viewing of the inside of the body with MRIs and CAT scans, right? And that's what this kind of stuff is. It's not just two-dimensional, which is what basic NLP, basic hypnosis is very powerful. It's all most people ever need, right? And when you get into the next level and you start doing this other stuff and understanding, how to profile people and puts them in different categories and does other stuff, it's first, be honest with you, if you take the class, it's easy to get stuck and it becomes somewhat dark because you start thinking, you become very overly self-reflect, kind of like they always say, doctors or psychologists, psychiatrists, when they get into the clinical side, they have every disease or maladjustment that they're studying at the time, right? And that's what happens here. You begin to look at that and you begin to like, and then you try to master it all, right? And if you ever master these human needs I talk about, the significance, the approval, the novelty, intelligence, pity, strength, which goes into how you make decisions, uh, you know, and that if you ever could master, if you've really got them under control, um, it has a tendency to make you you don't connect with humans anymore. Right? It's kind of like the psychiatrist that never cannot be a psychiatrist. You know, they're always diagnosing, they're always doing this, right? And I had a quick example was a friend of mine. I lived next to him when I lived up north. He was a cop. He was a local cop, sergeant on the local police force. Very good guy. Broke a couple of big cases up there, and they were talking about it. He's going to become the chief of police, right? And I liked him. He's a great guy. You know, I got to meet all the local cops because he built a garage from scratch. I got to help him, which was fun. And anyway, got me out of tickets because I met all these cops, and I get, you know. But one day I'm talking to him. He goes, somebody's going to come visit you. And I'm like, okay, what? He goes, well, they're going to ask questions. I'm like, okay, whatever. He goes, well, I applied for a couple of positions with the federal government, and they have to do these detailed background checks. So they're going to come and ask you questions. He goes, I'm letting you know, because you're kind of, times you could be a smart ass, and you might think I was sending someone kidding around. I don't want you to say, yeah, he's a great guy, as long as they don't find the bodies and you know, because it was he applied, ended up becoming a Secret Service agent because he wanted to go into cybercrime. And so when he told me, I go, cool. And then after his interview, and he got hired. And I said, why are you doing this? Like, you're on track to become, you know, police chief. He goes, well, a few weeks ago, well, it was a few months ago then, he goes, I was talking to one of the people that lived by them because they were asking questions, right? Just general neighborly things you do in a small kind of a blue collar neighborhood. And he goes, suddenly I pull back and go, I'm going to run this guy's plates. I'm going to do a background check. He was being a cop. And he goes, I didn't want to become that guy. He goes, I saw too many old cops like that. And he goes, and I said, yeah, but you're going to the Secret Service. He goes, I'm going to be doing cybercrime, you know, and mainly sex trafficking and stuff online, which was really starting to get started back then. And I'm like, oh, okay. And that hung in the back of my, and I was beginning to teach this. I said, that's kind of what I'm doing. I see everybody as what's going on underneath the surface, right? And so I could help people. I could be very effective, but I really couldn't connect, right? So I kind of pull back and go, I'm just going to teach, and basic NLP is all 95% of the world's population ever needs. Just learning a basic NLP class puts you in the top 1%, I would say, right? If you learn master, definitely in the 1%, where you understand waking hypnosis and this and that. This is going to put you in the 1% of the 1%, where you see things much differently, right? It helps you. That's why, and it comes from, you know, I've been to the FBI Academy and learned a lot of really cool stuff. You know, how they think, what's going on, you know, at the crisis negotiation course. Then I got access to a lot of their behavior profiling, you know, from the behavioral science unit. And it was fun. And I learned a lot, right? Again, I was starting to teach it. They never told me I couldn't. But it's like, I just kind of pulled back. But then I saw, you know, things are going on. And then someone sent me a link to a class. I'll get the guy's name and post it. And everyone should watch his stuff. It's really good. But anyway, the person told me, goes, isn't this what you taught, sort of? And even if it's the same stuff, we all teach differently, right? I would teach it differently than Shamala or Dr. John or, you know, Billy Schilling. We'd all teach it somewhat differently, right? So I'm like, yeah. He goes, well, why don't you teach that again? It sounds really cool. So I pulled out all the stuff, started doing the research, and go, okay, I'm going to do this class, right? And again, it took me down that path for a little while, right? But I've also, at the same time, 10 years ago, I started studying neurology, and especially heavily in the last 5 or 6, which also shows me how addiction works. It goes into the brain, your brain stem, your reptilian brain, your animal brain, and then your higher cortex, and all of this stuff, which ties into this, right? That's why I did the, law of attraction in neurology. How does it work in your brain when it's working, right? And same with this kind of stuff. So so going back to confidence, you want to develop the kind of confidence people want to be around, that positive confidence, that one where, it's magnetic to other people, right? And it's easy once you get that. I'm telling you, once you get this kind of authority and this kind of confidence, it's somewhat addictive, right? And you ever hear the saying that someone will say, well, power corrupts. And I forget who it was. One of the great thinkers, probably from Rome or Greece, said, power doesn't corrupt, it reveals. And I'm paraphrasing the quote, right? It brings out what's already there, right? So if you learn these kind of things and you begin to get that kind of authority, that confidence that's addictive, where do you go with it, right? And so hopefully, it's another reason I didn't teach it. I saw it misused by people I taught. But again, I'm just teaching information. It doesn't matter to me. So when you look at like James Bond confidence of that, and that's the kind of confidence which is based on being comfortable in almost any situation, right? Doesn't mean you're a master of everything. You're just able to adapt to the situation and bring the best out in the people around you. So anyway, that's just what I wanted to talk about confidence today. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. Go to hortonpsychology.com, hortonpsychology.com, excuse me. And there's a way to leave a message if you're not on my email list, where you can just email me, or on Facebook. Pass this information on. And again, the profiling class starts a week from today, June 19th through at least July 10th. I might add an extra Wednesday. It's 9 a.m. to 12 noon. I put up the time. 9 a.m. to 12 noon on Wednesdays for 4 Wednesdays for sure. And I'll probably do a follow-up, especially for trainers. So that's starting June 19th, 9 a.m. to 12 noon. Yes, it will be recorded, put into, a Vimeo where people can watch it. And so they can review it that way. So I'd like to thank everybody for jumping on the call. I'm trying something new, the StreamYard. It kind of is interesting. We'll see how it goes. It looked like it went pretty good on Facebook, which was my goal. I'm not sure how it went on LinkedIn. And I didn't do the right connection for it to go on Instagram. But like a lot of us, it's a new world order. I'm always trying different things, and I'll have the recording that I can do other things with. So if you have any questions, just reach out. And I hope everybody's doing well. We're living here in beautiful Southwest Florida where, yes, Miss East, 9 a.m. to 12 noon Eastern time. So that's early for you guys. But we're in Southwest Florida where we're having record rainfall, even by Florida standards. I think we got 5 inches of rain in an hour yesterday, right? And so that's what happens. When you live in paradise, I don't have to shovel rain. That's what I tell everybody. I've yet to shovel rain since I moved to Florida. So anyway, I look forward to seeing everybody. If you have any questions, just reach out, and I'll talk to you all soon, and Godspeed.